Friends, good evening. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the Gnostic Institute of Esoteric Magic. And we continue with our seminar on meditation. We are up to the heights of lesson number 9. And tonight, we would like to discuss 3 particular topics. We will explain just a little the concept of Zen Buddhism. We will speak about the 2 schools of Buddhism, and we will speak about some of the attributes of awakened man. But before we start, we would like to introduce tonight's session with a beautiful Zen story. This story is titled "The Moon Cannot Be Stolen," and it features a Zen Master Ryokan, back from the 18th century. This beautiful story, it says that a Zen master lived the simplest kind of life in a little hut at the foot of a mountain. One evening, while he was away, a thief sneaked into the hut only to find that there was nothing in it to steal. The Zen master returned and found him and said, "You have come a long way to visit me, and you should not go back empty-handed, so please take my clothes as a gift." The thief was bewildered, and he took the clothes and he ran away. And the Zen master sat naked in his hut, watching the moon, and he said, "Poor fella, I wish I could give him this beautiful moon." We share this story because as we try to take this small journey into the heart of Zen Buddhism, Zen Buddhism is a world where the words often fail us. Logic becomes a cage, and truth only arrives like a bolt of lightning, like a flash of an intuit from the innermost. So tonight in this lesson, we're going to be exploring a little bit this elusive nature of what Samael Aun speaks over and over again in his works as the Illuminating Void. And we will also speak about the 2 pillars of this Buddhist spiritual practice. And we're also going to visit some of the strange, marvelous behaviors of those who are truly awakened. And there is no better way to understand the aspect of those who are truly awakened than to put that in perspective with the place that we find ourselves today. Because not a comparison, but simply to understand in this scale that goes from matter to spirit, from earth to heaven, where is it that we find ourselves and what are the conditions that surround us? One of those things is called this trap of defining. This consequence of what the masters refer to as the philosophical curse that we have experienced from the moment that we were expelled from the Garden of Eden, where we feel a need to put everything into a definition, into something that we can get a sense of calmly stating, "Oh, I get that." A situation in which we experience some kind of weird mental satisfaction after we skim just the surface of these things that are so deep and so profound. And in this concept of the trap of defining, what our mind will consistently do is try to, quote unquote, wrap our hands around some subject so that once we feel that mental satisfaction of the mind that says like, yeah, I kind of get it, we automatically put some boundaries to it. And by setting some boundaries to it, we set up limitations. Many instances, we come to believe that we know everything that there is to know about any given thing, and we close the door to the opportunity of identifying new things, of learning more things, of finding out ways to better apply what we have learned. And this takes us to a dead-end road of the mind where we tend to say, "Oh, there's nothing more to it." And that is part of the many fallacies of the ego. That happens because within our intellect, well, there is not enough room to try to accommodate the vastness of what is the truth. So for all purposes, just like the masters teach us our intellect is a dungeon. And our essence remains trapped within it with the many considerations of understanding so many things, even though it is a very superficial, sometimes not even pragmatic understanding. This puts us in a situation where we, at the time of making that spiritual progress, we just don't see it. We feel like we are stuck. And within that limited progress comes some sense of frustration. That frustration when we come across that wall that the mind makes for us. But there is a patriarch, a great patriarch that is of name Bodhidharma in this Buddhist tradition. And Bodhidharma states that the truth, Tao, will come to us only when outwardly all the activity ceases and inwardly the mind ceases to steer. So when the mind becomes still, as they say, as solid as a wall, the truth will then enter. And this teaching is so profound because in the situation that we find ourselves today, we have so many attachments to our ideas, so many attachments to sensuality, to what our senses can perceive. And because we remain bound to those, and our intellect and our logic is only capable of so much, and based on what we receive through the senses are completely unable to perceive those greater aspects of the truth. Well, we continue bound to the many cycles of dramas and sensations that come with those dramas. But fortunately for us, the masters are here to give us advice. And their recommendation is you must become free of the mind. And that is because within our mind, we find our attachments, our desires, our fears, our insecurities. All of that is there within that ego. But deep within that, at the same time, we find the potential of the consciousness to be free. So we must break this wall that is made up by the mind. And both of these schools of Buddhism seek to do that, but they do it, each one in its individual and particular way. The tradition of Buddhism offers this practice of meditation. And meditation is a keystone of all of these world's great religions. Meditation is always associated with the Eastern culture. It is very easy for us to think meditation and immediately create this image in the mind and see the Buddha sitting comfortably, calmly, contemplative in meditation. Every time that we hear the word meditation, we immediately get a sense that there is something that has to do with spirituality, that is part, an element, perhaps a tool of a greater spiritual practice. And the two schools of Buddhism offer meditation as a way of driving an internal transformation, of breaking that wall of the mind. One of these pillars of Buddhism is Zen, and the other one seeks self-realization. One of these pillars is considered the greater school, and the other one is considered the lesser vehicle. And at the level of study that we find today, it is important that we understand what are these subtle differences so that we can see how is it that they both complement each other. Because in the way that our mind operates, constantly seeking for some logical comparison, when we hear greater vehicle and lesser vehicle, there is an aspect of us that would immediately suggest that one is better than the other, or that one is more important than the other. And this is not necessarily right. The greater vehicle of Buddhism is known as the Mahayana School. And it has one primary vision. Samael tells us that it is referred to as Tien. Tien is vision. It is seeing the reality. The Mahayana School emphasizes Satori. It emphasizes the emancipation of the consciousness, breaking free, like they say, just tearing the bag open so that the consciousness may escape the cage of the ego and may experience the illuminating void. The emphasis of this Mahayana school of Buddhism is not just samadhi. It is the ability of the student to be able to emancipate the consciousness, to experience those higher realms of creation. So it seeks the direct experience of that void, of the illuminating void. And so, if we were to say what is the type of comparison, what is the type of image that the Mahayana school of Buddhism will offer, it would be something very similar to offering you to climb to the top of the mountain so that when you're there, that you can see the view. Emancipate the consciousness so that when you're there, you can see that aspect of reality that is not immediately evident right here. And so Mahayana, Maha means great, and jhana means vehicle. So the Mahayana school, the great vehicle, it seeks that enlightenment. But it seeks the enlightenment for the benefit of all the sentient beings. This Mahayana school emphasizes what is known as the path of the Bodhisattva. And in this school, in terms of those fundamental elements of gnosis that Samael gives us, what we see is the expression of the inner Christ, that manifestation of the Savior that seeks to save. Enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. This is the Mahayana school. But there is also the Jinayana school. And the Jinayana school, well, it's considered, or the name translates as the lesser path. After so much influence from other forces that are not the original sense of Buddhism as it was rooted, that lesser path today is also interpreted by some as quote-unquote the deficient path. But the Jinayana school is just as important as the Mahayana school of Buddhism, because the primary focus of the Jinayana school is sing, says Samael. Sing means action. Vision in Mahayana, action in the Jinayana school. And that action is that one associated with the effort of self-realization. It is the work of mastering that which is real. It emphasizes a work that is different. While the Mahayana school is emphasizing that emancipation of the consciousness, get to the top of the mountain so that you can contemplate the view, the Jinayana school is emphasizing the work on the forge of the Cyclops. The Jinayana school is the one inviting to that practice of the super dynamic of love, of the union of these two polarities, the man and the woman in that matrimony that has been legally constituted, so that they can work and not only transmute those creative energies, but that they can use those energies for the elimination of those psychological aggregates, using that fire of Kundalini in a way that is orders of magnitude more powerful than simply trying to do the work by transmuting the creative energies. The goal of the Jinayana school is self-realization. They call it the self-realization of the void. That self-realization of the void is the work of the innermost, acquiring gnosis, the innermost knowing itself. This is what the Jinayana school is offering. This is what the Jinayana school does. And it is known as the lesser path, or, well, the deficient path in some minds, deficient because it's lesser, but in reality, deficient path because it is through the work of the super dynamic of love that we can eliminate all of those inferior aspects that exist within us. And by virtue of that elimination, by virtue of eliminating those deficiencies, we can see the manifestation of the virtues, the attributes, the crystallization of the superior existential bodies of the being. So you can see the Jinayana school is not looking for the enlightenment of all sentient beings. The focus is on the practitioner. The focus is on individual salvation, not universal salvation. But this is not an act of selfishness, because there is a lot of sacrifice that is involved behind this work. There is a need to willfully descend to those deeper, darker levels of the mind, adequately see what is there, the structure, the transactions of those defects, calmly contemplate, confront the consequences of those actions, and with that degree of comprehension, invoking of the Divine Mother to see those defects eliminated. This is what the Jinayana School is asking. The Jinayana School leads to the formation of what Blavatsky refers to as the Arat, the perfect man. Once that perfect man is fabricated, once that soul becomes a solar soul, an awakened soul, then that human soul of the innermost can then descend willfully, assume a form, and become that bodhisattva. Because the bodhisattva is the awakened, incarnated human soul of a great being. So notice how these two schools of Buddhism complement each other. The greater vehicle and the lesser vehicle. One is seeking enlightenment for all sentient beings following the path of the bodhisattva, and the Jinayana School is the one that leads the common human being through the work in the forge of the Cyclops to eventually develop itself into that superior man that can indeed become a bodhisattva. So Samael synthesizes this in a way that is so beautiful. He says, the link between the Hinayana and the Mahayana School is the golden blossom. That golden blossom is the golden embryo, the sublime flower. What the masters say is the extraordinary foundation of the intimate Buddha. This golden flower, this golden blossom, is what sets the perfect harmonic balance between vision and action. These are beautiful teachings from Samael. On this image, what we are showing you is a representation of Avalokiteshvara. Notice he has 1,000 arms. Avalokiteshvara, Spanish, Avalokiteshvara, is the second logos. It is the Dhyani Buddha of the limitless light. It is that inner Christ in each and every one of us that is waiting for us to intensely exercise this work so that it can blossom in all of its magnitude, in all of its splendor. Let me share with you some tales of awakened man. We want to share these stories, number one, because Samael sees them as very important and he shares them with us. But we can see with the behavior of the awakened masters how deep and how profound becomes their ability to see beyond what the eyes of the flesh can show us. How much more is it that they can understand as they not only read between the words, but how much is it that they perceive in areas where the common human being does not notice anything. And we would like to start by sharing with you a story that carries some sense, some flavor of a telepathic dance. In this particular story, there is an awakened monk. The awakened monk, Tien, stopped by to pay a visit to the venerable master Huishang. On arriving, he solemnly asked a certain assistant if the royal master was at home. And the mystic says, yes, he's at home, but he does not receive visitors. And Tien said, oh, what you said is very deep and strange. And the assistant then said, not even the eyes of the Buddha can see it. And then Tien argued, the female of the dragon gives birth to a little dragon, and the female of the phoenix gives birth to a little phoenix. And after saying this, he turned his back and he walked away. But later on, when Weishan came out of meditation and found out what had happened in his house, he pulled his assistant and he beat him up. And when Tien heard about this, he said, this old man deserves to be called a royal master. And in accordance with many exotic Oriental traditions, as soon as he spotted the guru, he spread out his blanket on the ground as if he were preparing to sit down to receive his teachings. And when that happened, Weishan said, no need. And Tien, hearing that, stopped and he stepped back a little bit. And the royal master said emphatically, it's okay. And unusually, however, Tien took a few steps forward towards the master once again, and then the master said, no. And at that moment, Tien understood everything. He made a symbolic turn around the Hierophant, and then he left. And after he left, the Venerable Master Weishan commented, it's been a long time since the days of the blessed. People are now very lazy, and within 30 years, it would be very difficult to find a man like this. Notice this story. One monk comes to visit a Venerable Master, and between them, the exchange is one of symbolic movements. Spreading a blanket, stepping back, stepping forward, circling the master, and they communicate themselves in profound understanding with such simple things. That understanding is so profound that it is the master, the one who laments that such men as awakened as the monk Tien, that finding awakened men like that would be very rare in the future. This is a beautiful example of a telepathic dance. But let me show you this one of a great master walking on water. In this story, Wang Po once found an awake monk and he walked along with him. And when they came near a stormy river, a river that was rushing furiously through its bed of rocks, Wang Po took off his bamboo hat for a moment, and he set it aside. He set aside his staff, and he paused to consider for a moment how is it that he was going to get through the river. And in those reflections, something unusual suddenly happens. At that moment, the other monk, he walked across the river. He walked on the stormy waters of the river without letting his feet touch the water and quickly reached the other side. As the story goes, they say in old traditions that are lost, as Samael says in The Night of the Centuries, that when Wang Po saw the miracle, he bit his lips and he said, he did not know he could do that. If he knew it, he would have pushed them to the bottom of the river. These miraculous powers, they are simply the natural product of true enlightenment. And every awakened man, every awakened woman has them. Those who have already fabricated that golden embryo, that golden blossom, working in that forge of the Cyclops, they all enjoy of these faculties, these powers, and these virtues. Now let me show you a last story. This is a story of Master Puhuas. And Puhua died. This is the story about Puhua's death. The story says the Zen master Puhua had been Ling Shi's assistant, and one day he decided that the time had come for him to die. And so he went out to the market and he asked people to give him a dress in charity so that he could wear that as his final garment. But then when some people offered him the dress and other clothes, he refused them. And he continued walking with a cane in his hand. And when Li Qing heard this, he persuaded some people to give Puhua a coffin. And so they offered the master a coffin. And he smiled and he said to the donors, this individual, Ling Shi, is really mean and talkative. But he accepted the coffin. And he announced to the people, tomorrow I will leave the city through the east gate and I will die somewhere in those eastern suburbs. And the next day, there were many people from the city. They were carrying the coffin. They escorted him to the east gate. And suddenly, the master Puhua stopped. And he said, oh, no. According to some geomancy, today is not auspicious. So it's better that I die tomorrow. I'll die tomorrow in the south, in the southern suburb. And so the next day, everybody went to the south. Everybody came together around the south gate. But Puhua, once again, he changed his mind. And he said, oh, today is not another auspicious day. So I would rather die tomorrow. I'll die at the west, in the western suburb. But by then, the next morning, there were a lot less people who showed up. Only a few people went to escort him the next day. And again, when they get to that western gate, Puhua looks around and he says, today is not an auspicious day. I will postpone my death from one more day. And I will die at the northern suburb. And by then, people were just tired. They were just thinking that he was not serious. Next day came up. Nobody showed up. So Puhua had to carry the coffin himself. And he grabbed hold of the coffin and he walked to the northern gate. And past the gate, he walked to the northern suburb. And when he arrived, he got into the coffin. He still was carrying his cane on his right hand. And he waited for some passersby to just walk by and arrive. And when he saw them, he said, oh, could you please nail the coffin once I die? And when they agreed, he just laid down in the coffin. He exhaled his last breath and he passed away. And then Jiang Xingxi, who is the one who tells the story, he says, the passerbys, they nailed the box exactly as they had promised. And so the news of the event started spreading like wildfire. And when they reached the city, the people began to arrive to the northern gate, to the northern suburbs in droves. And someone they suggested, we should often open the coffin and take a look at the body. But when they did, inside the coffin, there was nothing. Before they were able to recover from their surprise, they heard from the sky the familiar sound of the bells of the staff that Puhua had carried all of his life. And at first, the sound of the chimes was very prominent because it felt it was so close. And then it became weaker and weaker until finally, the sound of those chimes disappeared entirely. And nobody knew where Puhua had gone. Beautiful stories of resurrection, superior faculties, dominion over the elements of nature, virtues, love, kindness. And all of this becomes available to the masters through that thing that is known as the lesser vehicle. Through that work, that is that intimate work of those positive and negative forces conciliated with one another, always with the invocation of our Divine Mother. And so, friends, this is what we wanted to share with you today. Today we have covered a little bit of Zen Buddhism. We have spoken about the two schools. and some stories about truly awakened men. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. May all beings be happy.